Hey everybody, this is herculespetix, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies. Today we're going to be looking at Walt Disney's Uncle Scrooge, Only a Poor Old Man by Carl Barks. Walt Disney actually had nothing to do with these comics, but they're still owned by the big Disney Corporation. So everything that they put out has to say Walt Disney, as if he made it. And he probably didn't even read these comics. This is a beautiful Fantagraphics hardcover, very big and fat, and it collects all of the first Uncle Scrooge solo comics from the early 50s. I believe he got his title in 52, around then. Uncle Scrooge got his own title. Of course, it already appeared in many Donald Duck stories. Carl Barks had created him, and he proved so popular, he got his own title. And this is all just classic Carl Barks work. He's at the height of his powers. Many classic stories in here. Let's crack this open. Like all Fantagraphics stuff, just a very well-made book. It's I want to get more of these. It's weird. Ever since I was I don't know, my 30s, I started considering my comic collection an academy, where I started weeding out stuff that doesn't really belong, and sometimes even buying stuff that I just because it's an apex of comic book art. Like, for example, I own every Will Eisner's The Spirit, all those hardcovers. To be honest, everything before 1945 aren't that great. But I figure, yeah, like for historical completism, I don't sell those. I might one day, because to be honest, I don't know. I'll give them another chance, of course. I'll reread them. But, you know, I never read Carl Barks in my life. I knew he was one of the great cartoonists of all time. And I finally bought this book when I was at the comic store last year. And I was like, I gotta read Carl Barks. If I'm a supposed fan of this art form, I gotta read this stuff. I got some John Stanley, Little Lulu. I recently just got my first Tintin books. So, I'm gonna check all this stuff out that's, in the canon, if you will. This book came out in 2012. I believe it might still be in print. I think Fantagraphics is keeping these all in print. We have an appreciation by George Lucas. And it says copyright 1981 down here. So I'm curious what he wrote this for originally. It's actually not very good. It's George Lucas isn't that good a writer. It sounds like something a high school kid would write in a book report. Our first story, which the book is named after, Only a Poor Old Man. And we see Uncle Scrooge doing his classic, swimming around in his money bin like a porpoise. Burrowing around like a gopher and tossing it up and letting it land on his head. He's just so full of joy. This just makes him so happy. But of course, along with that comes a lot of worry. He loves his money, but he also has to worry about it all the time. So we see him here, like, shooting moths with this old blunderbuss, because he's so afraid like a moth might start eating his money. He's got all these rat traps, because, you know, the rats might nibble on the money. So he's constantly got to be diligent. And then one day, his nemesis, the Beagle Boys. The Beagle Boys were another creation of Carl Barks. I'm pretty sure he created them. And they were always trying to steal his loot. I love this, the classic cartooning of Carl Barks. Like, every panel is just beautiful the way he draws their faces. But then he wasn't afraid to go off model. Like, this is Uncle Scrooge full of worry. And that's almost grotesque. Like, I'm sure the Disney execs today would be like, no, Uncle Scrooge can't look like that. Kids buy dolls of this guy. That's going to make kids be like, hey, he looks weird. This one, we also get little glimpses into Uncle Scrooge's past. How he made his fortune. Basically, Uncle Scrooge is the self-made man. He's the American dream. You know, he started off poor, but just through hard work and being incredibly cheap, he built his fortune. We'll definitely see more of those flashbacks later. So the Beagle Boys buy the lot next to Uncle Scrooge's vault and his building. And Uncle Scrooge comes up with this elaborate plan to move all of his money to this lake, this reservoir. These comics were made for kids pretty much, and they still are pretty much really great kids comics. But I think the reason why adults still love these comics, it's not like they're going to get any deep character development or whatever, or what you expect from good literature, for example. But he's just such a great storyteller. I mean, just nice, simple little stories that just suck you in and pull you through the plot. Carl Barks is just so good at that. His cartooning is pretty flawless. I like the detail he puts in too. You know, he didn't have to draw like all this like detail on these trees, but he does. We'll see more examples of that. Where, you know, these are like cartoony comics, but he'll draw like a lot of the coins in there in his money pile. Of course, I haven't mentioned, we got Donald Duck in every issue pretty much, with Huey, Dewey, and Louie, Donald Duck's nephews. They're always helping out Uncle Scrooge. It almost seems that Carl Barks does draw Scrooge a little off model whenever he's under extreme duress. Like there's more detail on him when he's under duress. We'll see wrinkles. The feathers will be delineated a little more exactingly. So this is just a grand adventure of the Beagle Boys trying to still steal his loot. And these early ones, the Beagle Boys are pretty devious and smart. They're not just a bunch of bungling nincompoops like they... When I was a kid, I always got that impression in the few comics I read. Donald Duck and Uncle Scrooge comics. Like at the dentist's office. And, but in here, man, they're formidable. They're like matching Uncle Scrooge blow for blow, plot for plot, scheme for scheme. This was a kind of a new thing in comics. He's like, look how long the story is. This is just this epic adventure. You know, most funny animal comics were just one-page gags, maybe a 5-page little story. Oh, this is what I was talking about. Look at the detail here. Taken out of context, you would never even guess this was a funny animal comic. This could be some amazing manga panel. Or a non-manga panel. It's just, this guy could really draw. Like, seriously. I don't know if he ever did. I mean, I know he did those early girly cartoons when he started out. But, I'd be curious if Carl Barks did, like, serious paintings in his dotage. Yeah, it's a total epic, this comic. It's like a graphic novel. It's not as long as most graphic novels, you know. It's probably like, I don't know, 32 pages or something. But it packs in so much plot. It's insane. Because he's such a good storyteller. It's just, he knows exactly what to put in, what to take out. So we do have some one-pagers. And they're all, of course, based on Uncle Scrooge's greed. And his skinflintness. It's kind of an interesting drawing, this hobo. I like the way this book is organized. It's pretty much a big story, a few one-pagers. Kind of cleanse your palate. And then another big story. Speaking of big stories, this is one of Uncle Scrooge's Karl Barks's most famous stories, Back to the Klondike. Once again, almost every story starts with Uncle Scrooge at his money pit, or money bin. And I guess Uncle Scrooge is he's at his dotage. He's starting to lose his memory. He's starting to get amnesia, which is really messing up his business, because he's got to be sharp to deal with all these threats to his money or perceived threats to his money. So he gets these memory pills. His memory starts coming back, and he remembers his time in the Yukon, and he also remembers that he buried all this money on his claim back in Alaska. And I guess he just left it, forgot about it. But now he remembers, so he gets Donald and the 3 nephews to come with him up to Alaska. He's going to get his money. As they're sailing up there. Sorry, I need some water. He starts telling him about this woman that he once knew, and it's kind of implied, he was in love with her. Glittering Goldie, the star of the North. And when he talks about her, he gets this far off look in his eyes, like obviously there was something there. And when the kids suggest it was his sweetheart, he's like, bah. But he claims that he's just interested in her because she still owes him $1,000. So he's like, oh, I'd love to see her again with dollar bills. These comics are just, you just look at the pages and you just want to keep reading. They're so inviting, his like simple, clean cartooning and his storytelling. They're very readable. Even if you don't, I'm 56, if you're an old guy and you've never read these before, this is no nostalgia for me. But I had such a good time reading this book. It's, it's definitely kids. It's for kids, but it's just really well done. So we have, this is a great flashback. We get to see young Uncle Scrooge. He gets his first goose egg, as they call a big nugget back then. And Goldie swindles him out of it. So they have a very interesting relationship where she's a total grifter. But there's something about her. When he comes back to the saloon where Goldie works, actually I think she owns the saloon. And he just gets into this, just beats the shit out of every single guy there. It's like a Hulk comic. Apparently in the first publication of this, when it was a comic, these were censored. They didn't like showing Donald being so roughhousing and, violent. And now, luckily, they still have the art, and this is how Karl Barks intended it. So he basically abducts Goldie and makes her work on his claim to pay him off for ripping him off. And she's pretty formidable. She definitely stands up to Uncle Scrooge, and I think, he respects that. She's a tough cookie, this one. She's also very into money, like him. So they have that in common. So they're trying to come up to his old claim, and the cabin's still there, but someone's there. And they think Uncle Scrooge is an intruder, of course. And they've got like this pet bear, like a guard bear. And this bear is like trying to beat them or hurt them. So they're trying to figure out a way to get to that little cabin so they can dig up the lost money. And they realize they got to get rid of the bear. So they capture the bear, put him in this little cage. And of course, they're trying to keep it a secret who's the owner of this new cabin. It looks to be an old lady by her silhouette. I mean, it's so obvious. It's going to be Glittery Goldie, right? She's got all these traps on her land. And they do finally get the jump on her. And the nephews find out that it's Glittery Goldie. I like this little scene where there's so many mosquitoes there. They're completely covered. And Uncle Scrooge just says, lie down and roll. And they just crush them into a nice little mosquito rugs. So Glittery Goldie tells the nephews her story. She got totally broke, became totally broke after the gold rush. And she's been living there with the bear for, a long time. And as soon as she opens the door, she realizes Uncle Scrooge is coming in a second. Because the nephews say, yeah, our great uncle out there is going to, he wants his money back. She gets all gussied up. So obviously she still has feelings. And as soon as he opens the door, like, look at him here. He's like, oh, I'm going to get that $1,000 debt. And then as soon as he sees her, he's just like, oh, he's in the palm of her hand. But then he grabs a hold of himself. He says, you owe me $1 billion after compound interest. So he takes everything she has, and she basically just walks to the poorhouse, she says. So I got nowhere else to go. You've cleaned me out. I'm going to the poorhouse. But Uncle Scrooge makes this bet with her. And something like, who can dig the most gold? Because there's still Uncle Scrooge's little mini fortune under there. And Uncle Scrooge pretends that he's distressed, that she won and found the gold. But really, it was obviously just a plan. He couldn't admit that he had a soft heart for Goldie and, let her win. And because he didn't want to see her destitute. So it's kind of a different side of Uncle Scrooge, because usually all he loves is money. But apparently there was one woman in his life that he loved more than money. Some cute little one-pagers here, all pretty clever. Now we got another big one, something fishy here. Like I said, always starting with the money pit. Uncle Scrooge really loves swimming in that stuff. And this is like some elaborate joke played on Uncle Scrooge by Donald Duck, where he fakes the news headline, and it says, all currencies now abolished. From now on, all transactions will be made with fish. Fish will be the new currency of the land. So Uncle Scrooge is like, oh my God, I'm ruined. So I got to start getting fish. And of course, he's a wheeler dealer. And by trading and making deals, he slowly amasses this giant mound of fish. But he's like, oh my God, but I got to spend it fast. It's just going to rot here. Kind of hard to believe that Uncle Scrooge would fall for this. Kind of ridiculous. So it backfires on Donald, because Uncle Scrooge says, oh, I guess I should just give my whole fortune to Donald Duck. It's no fun being rich when, you can't swim through fish. You can if you can swim through coins, but it's not nearly as fun as swimming through coins. So he's like, I don't even care about my fortune. I'll give it to Donald. And Donald's house is completely covered in fish. A little one-pager, and then we start in with another big story. Parks love to draw stuff like this. He, just like these beautiful seascapes, the waves, ships, old-time ships. He was really good at it. He always tried to shoehorn into stories. So we got this elaborate story here. It's this guy named Chisel McSue. I guess he's the last heir of the Clan McSue. And I guess the Clan McSue has been fucking with the Scrooges since time immemorial. And apparently through some kind of legal shenanigans, Uncle Scrooge apparently still owes the McSue family this insane amount of money. So once again, Uncle Scrooge recruits Donald Duck and the nephews to help him figure something out here. So basically the gist of it is that one of his great-great-great-grandfather failed to deliver this horseradish to Jamaica back in the 1700s. He was a ship captain. And so the McSue clan basically says, you know, you owe us all your possessions. That was in the fine print of the contract, if you don't deliver the horseradish. So I guess it's still pending. So Uncle Scrooge says, I'm going to find the horseradish and deliver it to Jamaica in 48 hours. I love some of these undersea images with all these crazy fish. This is nice stuff. So Donald is down there in his diving suit finding all these various ships, and he finds the horseradish. But they can't get to Jamaica in time. The wind has died down. So of course there's all these this drama and twists of fate. A giant hurricane comes up. This is pretty exciting stuff. I was reading this last night, and I was like, oh, what's going to happen? I was like turning the pages really fast. So McSue shows up. He's like, oh my God, they're going to make it to Jamaica. And I'm not going to be able to steal their Uncle Scrooge's fortune. So all this crazy shenanigans happen. Yeah, this McSue guy's horrible. He actually totally betrays his partner, the guy who was helping him, and then basically threatens to kill everyone. You know, Uncle Scrooge and Donald Duck and the nephews. We also see another side of Uncle Scrooge, even though he's a completely greedy guy. He has the chance to kill. Well, McSue is gonna die, and he saves his life, even though it would have erased the debt, and he wouldn't lose all his fortune. You can imagine a lot of millionaires, billionaires today might make a different choice. But Uncle Scrooge is like really, and this guy tries to kill them, but still Uncle Scrooge deep down is a very moral guy, even though he's just completely greedy and full of avarice. So they make it. They get the horseradish there in time. And then after all that help, the nephews say, hey, you owe us $226 in wages. And he even tries to rip him, get out of that. He tries to cheat them. So he's really not a good guy, Uncle Scrooge. He's really is the worst example of a horrible capitalist. He always tries to swindle these guys out of their pay. He pays them 30 cents an hour, and then he tries to get out of it and tricks them out of their pay when they ask to be paid fairly. A few more one-pagers. And now we got another big one. Look at the way he draws these coins. He really puts in the detail. Once again, Uncle Scrooge is trying to protect his money, coming up with different ways to store it so that it won't be stolen by the Beagle Boys. And this is one where the Beagle Boys, you know, it's an early appearance, and these guys are pretty mean. They're pretty kind of brutal. They're a major threat. One pager. Little gag one pager again. And now we get into a nice long story. This is pretty much what made Karl Barks' name, doing the long stories, the epic adventures. And once again, we have another story of Uncle Scrooge taking elaborate measures to protect his money in different ways. And the Beagle Boys are one step behind him, sometimes one step ahead of him. Yeah, Uncle Scrooge's brilliant plan this time is he's going to put all of his money in cans. He's going to can them and then put them in these boxes and ship them. Donald Duck, while he's snooping around, he gets caught. And he gets boxed up in this machine, by this machine. Yeah, the Beagle Boys have totally taken over the ship. And all this time, Donald is missing, of course, because he's in a box. So they escape from this ship, our protagonists. But they do have one box of money. And when they open it up, it's Donald. I love this drawing of Donald. He's all rectangular. It looks like something Justa Suerto would draw or something. So the Beagle Boys totally have the upper hand. And they're really being dicks to our protagonists, treating them like slaves. These are nice colors here. It's night. Very deep blue. And then there's this islander guy who lives there, who's indigenous to the island, Kamaina, and he helps them out. He's got a lot of aces up his sleeve, even though he has no sleeves. All the backgrounds are just drawn really nicely. It's kind of amazing. I never read Karl Barks before. I mean, I definitely have. I've read short stories in like the Smithsonian Book of Comics. Here and there, I know I've read a few. But, you know, I never read the classic giant stories like Back to the Klondike, Return to Tra-La-La, or Tra-La-La. Strangely enough, though, I really got into Don Rosa in the 90s. And who obviously was totally inspired by Karl Barks. So you'd think earlier I would have taken a deep dive into Barks. So they defeat the Beagle Boys. Everything's good. It's such a weird little last panel. I guess on this island, there are these little elves. Like tropical elves. I don't know why this seems odd for me for an Uncle Scrooge comic. Weird way to end it. One-pagers. This one shows an interesting character trait of Uncle Scrooge, or maybe a break in his character. I guess maybe this was a thing back in the 50s. Hospitality Week. Invite someone to your home for dinner. And Donald's like, who are you going to invite? He's like, nobody. I'm not going to waste money on some guy. He might eat $1 worth of food. But then Donald says, you might be a social outcast. And Uncle Scrooge actually sees these like hoity-toity women calling him a pariah. But he figures it out. He runs to the carnival and he invites Cast Iron Charlie to his house for dinner, who only eats old razor blades and broken glass and rusty nails. So then he could just feed him some garbage, some scrap metal. But it's just odd that Uncle Scrooge would even give a shit about what people think about him when it gets in the way of his money. This one is just beautifully drawn. It's even nicer. And this shows his greed. He's looking through his ledgers. And even though he's a trillionaire or a gazillionaire or whatever he is, someone owes him a dime. And so he gets this, he hires Donald to be the bill collector. I guess it's been outstanding for a few years and it's just driving Uncle Scrooge crazy. It turns out that it was Donald. It was Donald owed him a dime. So he was basically hired to collect on himself. So he gives him the dime. And they get in this argument. And then, of course, through some crazy series of events, Donald actually, for once, gets the best of Uncle Scrooge and gets money out of him. So then this turns into this crazy thing. So Donald basically gets the best of him just by luck. When Uncle Scrooge gives him like a nickel or something or a dime, it's this rare coin. So he's like, haha, this is worth $10. I got $10 out of you. And this drives Uncle Scrooge mad. But then he decides to, he's like, oh, I have this 1916 quarter, which I'm going to make the rarest quarter in the world. And this shows how insane Uncle Scrooge is when it comes to money. He decides to buy up every 1960 quarter in the world to make his quarter the rarest one. And a complete rare object. He basically puts out ads saying, I'll buy your 1916 quarters at double the value. So he spends a lot of money doing this. And then he dumps them all in the ocean. And then, this is a very slapstick part of the story. He loses his quarter, the one quarter that's worth, I don't know, $1 gajillion. And it falls into this pie factory. Just total excuse for a pie fight. This crazy hijinks ensue. The nephews show up. Donald's already there. And we have this total melee here. A melee of meringue. And so we have, then a bird grabs the quarter. They found it, but then a bird grabs it. So just this is like a cartoon. This could totally be animated and be a great Donald Duck cartoon. So the quarter gets destroyed and he realizes he's gonna have to go back and find where he dumped those quarters to get another one. Once again, we have deep sea diving outfits. A nice underwater adventure. Oh, speaking of fish, look at these crazy deep water fish here he draws. They're kind of monstrous. And this story is so weird. It just keeps taking left turns. So as they get deeper and deeper, you know, they're looking for the coins. They find the lost city of Atlantis. And here's the Atlanteans. So I guess the Atlanteans have taken all the coins. Like this the king has a headdress made of the coins that Uncle Scrooge dumped. But not only will they not give them any coins to Uncle Scrooge, they actually say, you can't leave. If you come to Atlantis, you can never leave. Because you might tell the greedy earth denizens the surface dwellers where we are, and, you know, they might come to take us over. So they're thrown in jail. Two of the nephews get deep-sea diving outfits of their own and go to find out what happened to Uncle Scrooge and Donald, because they're taking a long time. They get captured as well. We find out the history of Atlantis, how it sunk beneath the waves. Those deep-sea glowing fish are like their lighting system. They just throw these fish in a glass globe to make street lights. Here they are milking whales. The stadium where trained squids fight in gladiatorial combat. So they find an old cargo plane that is obviously sunk in the ocean years ago. And it's full of jukeboxes. I guess they were delivering like 50 jukeboxes. And basically the Atlanteans are taken over by music. They don't know, they've never heard music before. So they keep putting their quarters in the jukebox, you know, those quarters that Uncle Scrooge dropped. And the two nephews are grabbing them. They're like, oh, Uncle Scrooge is going to be so happy. He's going to be rich. I like this, how they plug up the jukebox to an electric eel, because they don't have like normal electricity like we do. So they escape the Atlanteans with a nice little bag of coins that they got from the jukeboxes. So Uncle Scrooge is going to be rich. But then while they're escaping, one of the Atlanteans throws a trident, and Uncle Scrooge loses all of his coins. But then the final joke is that, you know, Uncle Scrooge does have one quarter. And it's, you know, worth $1 gajillion. But he takes it to a store where he could, like, trade it in. A rare coin store. And the guy tells him that there's only one person in the world rich enough to buy that coin. An eccentric old Jillionaire named Scrooge McDuck. So he's got this incredibly expensive thing, but nobody has the money for it. Nobody could afford it. So, wah, wah, wah. Some more one-pagers. And this one's kind of interesting, little character turn for Uncle Scrooge. Uncle Scrooge, you know, he loves his money, but because of it, every day he's getting requests for money. People are hounding him to donate to things. He's just got it's a constant worry. Everyone's after him. This guy says, I demand you to give $1 billion to the LTAB. What's that? The League to Abolish Billionaires. Down with the rich. So even the people who want him abolished are asking him for money. He starts going, look at him here. He's a wreck. He's looking at the squirrel in a tree. He's like, oh, how I envy him. And then something you never thought would happen. Uncle Scrooge just loses it. And he says, I hate my money. It's brought me nothing but work and toil. Get out of my sight. And he just checks out. He goes nuts. So one of his, like, company managers calls up Donald and says, you better get down here. Your uncle thinks he's a squirrel. He's got nuts. And so Uncle Scrooge is in a tree. I love this little panel where he's like a squirrel. He's on the tree. So Scrooge says, I want to go someplace where there's no money, there's no wealth. All money does is just lead to just worry. And people just want to hound you down and pester you for your money. So he finds out about this place called Tra-La-La, which sounds kind of like, you know, this mythical region, a valley in the Himalayas. And he says, I'm going to go there. And we have this running gag of anytime anyone mentions money, Uncle Scrooge starts losing it. Look at him. Luckily, he's got this tonic that the doctor gave him. He's got bottles of tonic in these soda bottles. When people mention money, it's getting worse and worse. Look at him here. He's just vibrating. You can barely see him. This is interesting. Bark's actually drawing a human being in his comics. He always makes people, you know, various anthropomorphized animals. But that guy just looks like a human. Not very well drawn. So I guess there's the answer. Maybe Carl Barks wasn't that good at drawing everything realistic. He could do backgrounds very well, but maybe just wasn't that good at drawing people. So they find out where Tra-La-La is. They figure it out, and they're going to take a plane there. They've all got parachutes on. And as they're flying over Tra-La-La, Uncle Scrooge opens a bottle of his tonic, and the bottle cap flies out the window. We see it here. Look at that panel. Speaking of Carl Barks drawing backgrounds, that's pretty epic looking. So they land, and Tra-La-La is this paradise where it's a land of milk and honey. So they meet the people of Tra-La-La. Uncle Scrooge can converse with them because their language sounds like ancient cafe. And this guy fills them in on how great their society is. And everyone helps each other out. Nobody really cares about owning too much. But then one day, this Tra-La-La-ian finds the bottle cap that Uncle Scrooge threw out the window. Uncle Scrooge is loving his new life, just working hard and not having to worry. But then that Tra-La-La-ian brings it to Uncle Scrooge, the bottle cap, and says, "Oh, this is yours." And Uncle Scrooge says, "Oh, you can have it. I don't want it." And this person shows off the bottle cap to everyone, and everyone starts saying, "Ooh, I want one. I'll give you a sheep for it. I'll give you 2 sheeps." Then finally the guy breaks down when he offers him 10 sheeps. But then he turns around and sells it for 20 sheeps. And pretty soon the bottle cap is going for like 100 sheeps. It's like the tulip craze. So Uncle Scrooge has got a few bottles of tonic left. He's about to dump them into the water because he's like, "I don't even need these anymore. I feel great." And one of the Tra-La-La-ians says, "Oh my God, you have 5 bottle caps. You're the richest person here." And of course, everyone starts descending on him. And they offer him crazy amounts of stuff for the bottle caps. And Uncle Scrooge just throws a bottle cap at him. They start this giant brawl. So within like a few days, this pure society has become totally corrupted by money and greed. So of course Uncle Scrooge comes up with a brilliant plan. Actually, it's quite stupid. He says, I'll have Donald return to civilization and buy 1 million bottle caps. Hell, I'll make it 1 billion. And they'll hire a plane to just shower down bottle caps on the valley. And then they'll be worth nothing. They'll basically be worth nothing. So everyone has collected them. They all are like, "Oh my God, this is worth 1 million sheep." But then, of course, they realize, due to supply and demand, that everyone's like, "I'm not going to trade you anything for your bottle caps. I've got more than I can deal with." And more keeps raining down like every few hours. Every few hours, a plane just drops 1 million bottle caps. And he realizes this is a mistake. He says, 1 billion. That's literally going to, like, fuck up Tra-La-La. It's messing up the rice paddies. The sheep can't eat the grass. So they realize they got to stop these plane drops. They put Uncle Scrooge on trial. But they stop the planes. And they make it back to civilization. And Uncle Scrooge is like, I don't think I need the tonic anymore. I'm kind of over it. But then the nephews ask for their back pay. And look at him here. Apparently he's going to need the tonic. Another one-pager. Some of these like little anthropomorphized dudes in the background look so odd to me. Not in a bad way. Like I almost want to read a whole comic about him. Like, who's this piggy guy? He deserves a story. Once again, beautifully drawn backgrounds, man. He didn't skimp just because he was drawing these little kitty comics. He could have. This is one where, like, Uncle Scrooge is a total piece of shit. He's so weird that he's such a beloved character, and he's really horrible. He basically wants Donald Duck's land and his neighbors so he can build a shitty factory or something. Both of them are very house proud. They love their places. They're not going to sell to Uncle Scrooge. So he decides to trick them into ruining their own properties. He basically tells them that there's all this treasure under their beautiful gardens and stuff. So, you know, everyone's greedy. Not as greedy as Uncle Scrooge. And they start ripping up their lawns, their beautiful gardens and lawns, tearing apart their houses, thinking that there's money in the floorboards and the siding. Because Uncle Scrooge totally made up this lie. This one actually like made me feel agitated and nervous. I was like, this is so evil. I'm never going to be able to own a house. So I was just like, oh, you guys, don't sell it to Uncle Scrooge. Good for you. And then they ruin their own houses. But then the nephews turn it on Uncle Scrooge. And they basically do the same thing. And they're like, oh, no, the treasure's in Uncle Scrooge's house. If you dismantle it, it'll probably thank you for it to find the treasure. So then everything's settled. And Uncle Scrooge has to agree to build their houses back up and even plant the tulips. So for once, at least there's justice. And that one more one-pager. And then we get to see the covers. And these are very nice cartoony. And really nice, elaborate story notes. Even though a lot of them are kind of slight. I think it is the reason why is because, you know, Carl Barks is so revered. And these are really fun stories. But at the end of the day, it's not like you'd rather read this than, I don't know, Mouse or something. I mean, they are little goofy comics for kids. And there are little lessons in them. And there's some just flawless cartooning. But these guys are trying to basically academically support why Carl Barks is so great. I don't think you have to. I love these. They're fun. Sometimes it's fun to read a kid's book, you know? But it's not really going to supplant, you know, important literature. Or maybe it will. I guess some people do just like to read kid stuff. So just the various people doing the commentary. Here's the panels that they substituted. Remember I told you back to the Klondike, they censored that like page of Donald Duck brawling. I'm sorry, Uncle Scrooge brawling. I guess these were used to replace the missing art at one point. But since then, we found those panels, that art. Yeah, they really nice cover reproductions among the commentary. Of course, you can imagine Tra-La-La gets the most commentary Because it is, obviously, it is a pretty great parable about capitalism and money and stuff. And here's a really nice little mini biography of Karl Marx. So there you have it, guys. Uncle Scrooge, Only a Poor Old Man by Karl Marx. I hope these are still in print. I think they are. And I want to hunt down, there must be like 30 more of these. Donald Duck and or Uncle Scrooge by Karl Marx. So I'm definitely going to put these on my list. They're pretty pricey for a poor guy like me, but definitely if these are on sale anywhere, I'm getting them. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and I hope to see you next time here at the HerculesPetix Academy of Comic Book Studies.